Okay, let's dive right into this. Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're unpacking something absolutely fascinating from the world of chaos magic, the creation of sigils. Seriously, if you've ever felt like your own conscious mind is constantly getting in the way of your actual goals, you are going to love this. We're not looking at sigils as some kind of mystical fairy dust here. Instead, we're treating them as a results-based magical tool. Think of it as literal psychic technology that you can use to program your subconscious mind.
To get us there, we've got a super clear roadmap for this explainer. We're going to cover programming the subconscious, defining your intent, designing the symbol, charging and activating it, forgetting and releasing it, and then we'll wrap up with some advanced pro tips. It's essentially a highly structured how-to manual for psychic tech.
So part 1, programming the subconscious mind and bypassing the rational. Let's get into it. The core concept we're dealing with right off the bat is that a sigil acts kind of like a temporary psychic virus. It's basically self-executing code designed specifically to bypass your rational inner critic. And there's a really straightforward 4-step life cycle to build that code. First, you craft your intent. Second, you condense that intent into a symbol. Third, you charge it with energy. And fourth, you release it completely from your mind so you know exactly what the journey looks like.
All right, moving into part 2, defining your intent, which is really all about writing the base code.
So the crucial point is that the effectiveness of your entire sigil depends entirely on this first step, this foundational command. This is not just throwing a passive wish into the universe. It's an active declaration of your will. The golden rule, you have to use a tense of being or intent. Phrases like I am or I will are way more effective than saying I want. Because think about it, saying I want actually signals to your subconscious that you lack something, right? You wouldn't say I will not be anxious. Instead, you'd give an active magical command like I am calm. You have to write the exact specific reality you intend to execute.
Which brings us to part 3, designing the symbol. Or, to stick with our tech metaphor, compiling the code.
To do this, we're going to use a reduction method derived from the artist Austin Osman Spare. Basically, we are compiling linguistic code by stripping away all that conscious, everyday baggage to create an unrecognizable abstract glyph. Let's look at a foundational command we can use as an example. I am in control of my mind. Notice how it's direct, it's positive, and it's definitely in a tense of being.
Okay, next step, reduction. We literally just delete all the vowels, A, E, I, O, U, and yeah, let's toss Y in there too, from the phrase. So now our command is reduced to a chunky string of consonants, M, N, C, N, T, R, F, M, and D. And why do we do this? Well, by removing the vowels, we immediately start stripping away conscious baggage and confusing the rational mind. It can't easily read the literal words anymore.
The final step in this reduction phase is to cross out any repeated consonants. What we're left with is a single set of unique letters, M, N, C, T, R, L, F, D. Now, here's where the compiling really happens. Your job is to take these remaining unique letters, visually overlay them, twist them, and just mash them together into a single stylized design. You literally just keep sketching until you have an unrecognizable, abstract glyph that perfectly represents your will.
Let's move to and see how this builds in part 4, charging and activating. This is where we execute the program.
So you have your compiled code, but now you actually have to fire it into your subconscious mind. And to do that, you have to bypass what practitioners call the psychic sensor. Enter a concept called gnosis. Gnosis is an altered state of consciousness required to actually charge a sigil. And getting there usually requires pushing your mind to an absolute extreme, either through a dramatic peak experience or through a really slow, subtle absorption. Let's look at the active ways first. On one hand, you have excitatory gnosis. This is super high energy. We're talking wild dancing, vigorous drumming, intense breath work. You build and build to this massive climactic peak, and right at that explosive moment of release, you intensely visualize the sigil. Okay, and on the other hand, we have inhibitory gnosis. This is very low energy, deep, calm. You might engage in prolonged meditation, slowly quieting your mind until all that internal chatter just ceases. And in that profound silence, you simply hold the sigil in your mind's eye. But hey, if neither of those sounds appealing, there is actually a third, much more passive charging technique called indifferent vacuity. This relies on prolonged casual exposure until your conscious mind literally just gets bored and stops noticing it. Think about practical, everyday, modern examples here. You could set the newly designed sigil as your computer or phone wallpaper. You could slap a post-it on your bathroom mirror, or even tattoo it on your hand.
Eventually, your brain just filters it out as background noise, which allows the symbol to slip right past that psychic sensor and directly into the subconscious.
All right, part 5, forgetting and releasing, getting the program running in the background.
This is, without a doubt, the most critical step of the entire process. You absolutely must let the program run without interference. Achieve total non-attachment. Now, what's really interesting about this is confronting the biggest threat to your success, which is actually your own obsession, specifically your lust of results. This is that conscious craving and constant anxiety about the outcome. If you're constantly obsessing over whether it's working, your conscious mind just keeps pulling the code back up, interrupting the program and ultimately causing it to fail.
So the big question, how do we actually release it? Well, it depends on your charging method. If you used one of those peak charging methods we talked about, destroying the physical copy of the sigil, like burning it, tearing it up, or burying it, creates a really clean psychological break. However, if you use the wallpaper method, that indifferent vacuity, the release is actually integrated right into the charging phase. Once you naturally stop noticing the sigil in your everyday life, boom, the release has already occurred. Moving into our final section, part 6, advanced magical pro tips and troubleshooting. System hacking, basically. This is where things get genuinely wild, because advanced practitioners treat sigils not as static spells, but as evolving living tools. For example, sigil shoaling. That's launching a massive swarm of smaller sigils to handle tiny individual aspects of one giant goal, or creating living sigils that are designed to evolve daily. You could even write death sentence programming, where you command a sigil to feed its leftover energy into an entirely different project once it finishes its job. Then there are retrotemporal echoes, where you might notice solutions forming before you've even cast the sigil. Crazy, right? You can also cast decoy sigils that are meant to deliberately fail just to exhaust your own inner skeptic, or make glitch sigils out of pure grammatical nonsense to totally fry the logical brain. It is an incredibly creative hacker mindset space.
Let's quickly tackle some common troubleshooting questions. First up, does your sigil have to be artistic or look good? Short answer, no way. The aesthetic is totally irrelevant. Honestly, it doesn't matter if it looks like a museum masterpiece or a total scribbled mess. It just needs to be a unique, abstract shake that represents your will to your subconscious. That's the whole shebang. Next question, can you create a sigil to influence or control another person? Look, while the mechanics theoretically allow for it, the massive, blinking warning light here is that attempting to override another person's will is incredibly difficult, and it almost always backfires in really unexpected ways. It is highly, highly advised to keep the focus of your intent entirely on yourself and your own circumstances. Edit your own code, not someone else's.
Question 3. Can I have multiple sigils active at the exact same time? And this brilliantly illustrates a core strategy in chaos magic. The answer is yes. In fact, running multiple sigils at once is a classic technique used to actively combat that lust of result we talked about earlier. Think about it. By spreading your focus across a whole bunch of different intents, it becomes so much harder for your conscious mind to obsess over any single outcome.
Finally, what are the most common reasons a sigil might just fail to work? Well, it usually boils down to a few key failure points. Poor phrasing, like using I want instead of I am, unrealistic intents, or, the big one, letting your lust of result interrupt the process. As we wrap up this explainer, consider this. Editing the source code of your reality isn't just about throwing a desire out into the universe and hoping for the best. It's a highly specific skill. It requires the precision of a programmer to write the command, the raw energy to execute it, and most importantly, the profound wisdom to let it go. So what do you think? Are you ready to write your first line of code?